Hello, people. Hi. This is so new for me, but I'm very excited about it. So, this is the first video, and I'm going to kind of play this by ear because I feel like that's the best way that I usually do teach. So, we're just going to roll with punches and see how things go. Okay? Now, this video, if you didn't read the newsletter, is all about what paints I use, specifically for this one, leather paint. So today we're going to go over different companies that I've used, why I use them still, why I don't use them, and maybe just some overall suggestions for you guys. So let's jump right in, shall we? So, since I don't know anything about technology, and I'm really not super great at editing and figuring stuff out, I went old school today while I'm introducing to you the new paints that we'll talk about. So, the first three companies that I wanted to talk about are, number one, Liquid Kicks, okay? Number two, Alpha Six Corporate or Corporation. And number three, Angelus Direct. Okay. Now, why I'm sitting here and telling you about this is because I paint leather products. So pretty much any fabric, these paints will work for you. And the reason why they will work for you if you're going to paint on fabric is because it's a leather paint. So it's designed to not only sit on whatever product you're trying to paint, but it's also going to stain that fabric so it never washes off and it never cracks. I have used quote unquote liquid paint, or not liquid paint, fabric paints in the past in different brands, and I have always found that they crack, or you can scrub them off, or they just kind of go really dull. And so I spent the last 5 years finding products that I love, finding products that fit for me. And so these are the three that we're going to talk about. I'm sure there are more out there. I've just specifically chosen these three because these are the three that I've experimented the most with. So let's start with my favorite brand. Okay. So Angelus Direct is my favorite leather paint that I use. You can get them in different sizes, and they have like, probably like 30 or 40 different colors that you can get. I usually stick with my primaries because this is just a system I do, and I make the other ones I want. But if you want fluorescent paints, if you want like metallic paints, obviously they have those as options. And I do purchase those because those are hard to make on your own. So let's go over sizes. So you can get 1 quart size in most colors, which I get a white in this big one because, let's face it, this sucker has lasted me 2 years. So then we have the 4 ounce. Okay, a little smaller. I get a lot of my primary colors, or like colors I will use pretty often, in this size. So like black, yellow, red, things that I know I'm going to use more often so I don't have to continue to buy. And then there are these little 1 ounces, which are fabulous for colors that you don't think you're going to use very often, or just if you want to test a color and you're not sure you're going to love it, this is a great option as well. So usually what I do to prep the surface of the leather is I like to use their leather preparer and deglazer. Okay, this stuff is amazing. It's not going to change the color of the leather, because I have had products in the past where I will put it on there and then like all of a sudden, instead of it being like a brown, it's now like a tan where I was rubbing off. Other brands that I have tried, it like takes the entire finish off, and so then you're stuck with like trying to quite literally paint the entire surface, or you can screw up in spots and it doesn't look as good or professional. So I love using this because it doesn't do that, but it takes away that top layer of the finish just enough so that when you paint on it, the paint sticks better. Now, you don't have to use the deglazer. I have just found that it's more effective and the paints last much longer. So there's that. And then I wanted to share one more thing that I think is really what puts Angelus Direct above all the other brands. They have phenomenal additives for your paints. So if you have thicker acrylic paints, they have this thing called Too Thin. And this allows for you to put it into that thick paint, and then instead of it being like chunky, it's like really liquid paint. And they do the opposite. So if your paint adhesive is like, so if you have a hard surface, so like let's say you want to paint like a water bottle, like one of the tin water bottles, they have this thing called Too Hard. And that is a plastic adhesion promoter. So it helps kind of keep it from like scraping off those surfaces, which again, I obviously have one in this size and one in this size. The Too Hard I don't use nearly as often as I use the Too Thin. So like if some of my paints are starting to get kind of dry, I like to just put a little bit in there and mix it up, and then they're usually good to go. Now let's talk consistencies of those paints. So usually if you're using acrylics, pretty much of any kind, they're gonna be a little thicker. So they have some like viscous to them. These paints, however, are like almost water, but slightly thicker. So if you're used to using like ink or like thicker ink, it's very similar to that. And it's going to be much smoother when you're putting it on a surface. So if you really need like very tiny fine details, usually like my tiny brushes with a little bit of that paint, I can get like the tiniest, thinnest of lines. The only downside to that is you don't get texture, like physical texture. You can obviously create the illusion of texture, but you don't get like the physicality of texture with those paints. And personally, if you're painting leather, you kind of don't want that. So that is Angelus Direct. Okay. One more thing about them is a product that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to gear into the next company. Now, they do have a water stain and repellent spray. So once you finish painting, you usually want to use this so that it coats it and it won't scrape off or any of that stuff. Now, I started using this when I found the company, and I used it quite often. However, I did more research and found a much better option within a different company. So now we're going to jump into liquid kicks. Sorry, couldn't say that for now. So this is the leather top coat. Okay. Now you can get this in a matte, and you can get it in just like a regular satin. And the reason why I'm telling you about this is because this is a freaking game changer. Like, I'm not even kidding. So like this was okay, but if I like scraped hard enough on surfaces, a lot of the paint would chip off, whether I wanted it to or not, regardless of what surface I was painting. This shit is bananas. Like, I don't even know how to explain it to you, but I'm going to try. So this stuff, you have to apply with a brush so you don't get the spray factor, which is fine for me. I usually like to do 2 coats of this and 2 really thick coats. Now, what's different about this is I have quite literally scraped my bags with like pocket knives to see if I could get any of the paint to come off. Nothing. Okay. I can scrub my shoes with a like, what are they called? Like a really coarse brush. I can scrub my shoes with a coarse brush with water and soap. And it's like, it just cleans the shoe. This stuff keeps it from ripping off, keeps it from doing any of that. This makes it permanent. Like, and I'm talking insane amounts of permanent. So, other than that, Liquid Kicks, they have some good products, and I have liked their stuff. I just don't keep it in stock because, to me, if I already like another brand, I'm going to stick with their colors and other things just because, to me, it makes more sense and it's easier to purchase in bulk. But what I want to tell you, which is why we're going to gear in to the next one, is that the Alpha Six Corp, okay? Now, they are the same thing, but they started with, like, calligraphy paint. So, you know, people who paint on windows or they paint really fancy signs. So, their paint was geared towards that. However, they have since been able to push into, like, car paint, like detail paint for cars, like little pinstripes and things like that. And obviously shoes and leather and other fabrics. The reason why I'm bringing them up is I currently don't have any more of the paint because it's very expensive. But they do have metallic paints that are out of this world when it comes to different companies' paints. So they have this paint on there called mermaid paint, and I'll try to put a clip or a picture of it somewhere. It's like a mermaid style, and it is amazing. Like, it's that kind where it starts where it's blue and then it kind of turns to like a purple and then kind of a green, and it like has all that fancy, I don't even know what you call it, but that paint is like out of this world. And a lot of like the golds and the silvers and things like that, they're top notch. So, recap, and to be quite honest, it really doesn't matter which brand you go with. However, my combinations have worked really well for me. So regardless of what company I go with, I will never not use the Liquid Kicks sealer. Doesn't matter what company you go with. Doesn't matter what paints you go with. Those paints, or that sealer, will work with all of those paints. And same with Angelus Direct when it comes to their Too Thin. Okay. Now, you have to be careful, though, because some of these don't mix well with other companies' paints. But with Angelus Direct, I will never not use this because it's always something I need to have in my back pocket. Always something I will refer back to. And last but again, not least, I will never not own this in my house. Okay. I use it for everything. And so regardless, whatever product, whatever company you go through, you're going to want to make sure that the mixing combinations will be good for all different kinds of paint. And I've done the trial and error, and I'm just telling you straight up, Angelus brand is really good with mixing and blending with other companies' paints. So that's my little tidbit about leather paint. I usually, when I start something, will do a full coat of white. I'll do like 2 or 3 layers of white, just an outline of the object, and then I'll just get started on painting. When it comes to shoes, I usually just purchase white shoes and go from there. If you are ever painting on a surface that's not white, you will want a white underlay so that the colors you are going to put on there will show up better. But regardless, that's all I got for you today. But keep an eye out. I'm going to start talking about a whole bunch of other kinds of paints and different things. Oh, I forgot about this. The other thing about this paint, all this paint, is you're going to want to use either a watercolor brush. So it's got to be a brush that's made for watercolors, or you're going to want to use like a multi-use brush. You do not want a coarse brush with this product because all you're going to get is like stringy kind of texture, which if you're trying to cover something fully, you don't want that. You want to get brushes that are like very soft and they have like more of a bendy factor versus like, and I don't even have my oils up here, but versus like an oil brush. So you do not want a coarse brush. Other than that, you use water, clearly, to brush or to clean your brushes, and you're going to want to use paper towels or a rag to clean, to like wipe them off. Now, I personally would recommend that you wash your brushes after each and every usage. And I'm not talking just rinsing. I'm talking like with soap or like dish soap or like a paintbrush soap. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you don't, the paint will dry and get nasty down in through these roots, which means that if it gets hard and crusty, then you're losing the shape of your brush and you're going to lose the life of your brush. You're going to have to buy more brushes. But all these companies do sell brushes. I just choose not to use them because I have my own preference of brushes and what I like to use. But I would recommend, if you're going to do small, tiny paintings, like the pins that I have and things like that, all of that is Angelus Direct paint or liquid paint. But I have very tiny brushes, and those are easy to find. I usually find mine on Amazon. I go with a company, I think it's called Shape First, and there's like, I think they give you 10 brushes, and they're all different levels of tiny brushes. But I think realistically, with how often I paint with them, I go through one set maybe once a year, but they're like $15. So to me, it's worth it to have that opportunity. And if you paint as often as I do, regardless of how well you take care of your brushes, the life of the brush will change. Like, it's going to get all gummy and stuff, even if you clean it. And sometimes they can just get really misshapen. Like if you look at this one, it's gotten really frayed and it's breaking off really heavily towards the edges. That's just because I've been using that brush for a long time. So aside from everything else, I'll go ahead and wrap up now because it's like almost 20 minutes, which I do apologize. But regardless, whatever paint you choose, if you're going to do fabric or leather specific, I would recommend leather paints. Don't waste your money on fabric paint at Michael's. Don't waste your money on fabric medium additives for your paints. It's not going to last. You will not be happy with it. If you don't want to use the brands that I'm talking about, look for leather paint products. So regardless of what brands I'm talking about, look for that and you will be much happier with your results. And again, if you ever have questions, if you ever want more recommendations, you know where to find me. I'm happy to share. But other than that, there will be more of these little I'm hoping to keep them under 20 minutes, 20-minute videos just about me sharing what paints I use. We'll go into products and tools and canvases and all that jazz throughout the coming months. And if you enjoy these videos, please let me know because I'm always willing to try new things. I'm excited about sharing my knowledge and I want to know specifically really what you guys want to learn about. So if you've got questions about any of that, let me know. Thank you very much for watching and enjoy the rest of your week.